Climate change is clearly affecting our weather patterns. The problem is some animals are adapted to a specific climate. Some only thrive in the cold. And I mean really cold.
Animals living in the Arctic, for example, are used to being in temperatures sometimes getting as low as minus 40 degrees centigrade, and for months at a time. Much of this region is also locked in 24-hour darkness, nothing but frigid weather and brutal winds.
Sounds impossible to survive, right? Well, polar bears have evolved to thrive in this harsh environment.
So polar bears are actually clear. They're not white. The white fur is the way that our eyes perceive the light hitting the fur. So those longer guard hairs, which are what make a polar bear look so fluffy, those longer guard hairs help insulate. So they're so well adapted to live in their environment.
In today's episode, we're going to meet someone on a mission to protect polar bears living in the wild. And she's doing it in the most unexpected place.
I'm Peter Gross, wildlife expert and educator.
And I'm wildlife ecologist Dr. Ray Wingrant. And this is Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, the podcast, episode 11, The Incredible Resilience of Polar Bears.
Polar bears primarily live in the Arctic regions of Canada, Alaska, Greenland, Norway, and Russia. On the original Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom series, Marlon Perkins flew over the coast of Cape Churchill in Manitoba, Canada, to observe them.
Polar bears gather there each year, waiting for the sea ice to form so they can hunt seals without entering the frigid waters.
No trees are visible, and the air is clear and cold. We will decrease airspeed and lower altitude now to look for some bears. We soon see what was hidden from higher up, the polar bear. This big male is on a mantle of snow and ice not yet thick enough to properly support him, despite his broad, heavily furred feet.
Ray and I went to Churchill ourselves to shoot 2 episodes for Wild Kingdom Protecting the Wild. One about polar bears and the other about beluga whales.
It was summertime, so the bears weren't on the ice hunting for seals. Instead, we found a mama bear and her little cub sunbathing on land.
Oh, I see it.
You see it? Look right here. It's a good look.
Oh my gosh.
Ray and I have just spotted a polar bear mom and her cub with the help of veteran tracker Dennis Comparet.
Oh, it's bear time. It's bear time. It's bear time.
Our guest today is based far from Churchill, but she also spends a fair amount of time observing polar bears.
Nikki Smith is curator at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium in Ohio.
So my arrival in Columbus brought me face to face with the first bears that I have ever gotten to work with. And we are fortunate enough here to work with black bears, brown bears, and of course, polar bears. And they are all just incredibly wonderful for different reasons. But polar bears are truly, I think, one of the most amazing species that we have on our planet today, and that we have the ability to see at our zoos.
I love how the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium is designed to bring guests closer to the animals. One of my highlights when I was there was walking through a glass tunnel where if you looked up, you could see polar bears swimming right above you.
This was an incredible habitat.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody having been in the water before and having polar bears swimming over their heads.
Yeah.
So our polar bear habitat is about 1.5 acres or so, and our saltwater pool is 167,000 gallons, where we have trout that swim in that pool along with the polar bears. Overall, it's just a really engaging, immersive experience.
I just have to reiterate what an incredible display it is. Can you give us an idea what their daily life is like there at the zoo?
Yes. Our bears have access to both their habitat and their building 24 hours a day. They have the choice to be either with each other out on the habitat, maybe take a break and come inside for the air conditioning. I will tell you that I feel like polar bears are the nosiest of the bears. They enjoy knowing what's going on. So they do like some of the higher perches in their exhibit because they like to see what's happening. So if they hear us in the building, you can rest assured somebody's going to saunter in there and take a look, see what you're up to.
So a great place to be if you are a polar bear. is the Columbus Zoo. Now, you said our bears. Where did the bears come from originally?
So the polar bears that are housed here at the zoo are part of the polar bear management group throughout AZA zoos. So there are a number of zoos that house polar bears, and we are one of them. Right now, we have a male and a female, and Lee, who is our male, and our female is Aurora. And then she has been here at the Columbus Zoo since we opened our exhibit in 2009. So she's been with us for a long time now.
Is there something that struck you about the species physically or behaviorally that is unique to polar bears?
I think it is mostly that they are always watching you. Even when you don't think they are always aware of what's going on in their environment. We had a female that lived here for a while. Her name was Anana. She used to sneak up and hide in her pool, and she would dip down in it. And if you walked over to say hi and she knew you were close enough, she enjoyed pouncing to try to get you wet. They're very perceptive animals, and I think they have to be. They live in an environment where if they miss an opportunity, that could have dire consequences for them. So they're really just so smart and so perceptive.
Speaking of being smart and having to survive in such severe climatic conditions, what sort of physical features help them survive?
They have very thick skin, and then they have a dual coat of fur. So they've got an undercoat, and all polar bear hair is hollow, and it's air-filled. So polar bears are actually clear. They're not white. The white fur is the way that our eyes perceive the light hitting the fur. So those longer guard hairs, which are what make a polar bear look so fluffy, those longer guard hairs help insulate. They've got those inner hairs to keep nice and tight together. They're not nearly as soft as you think they look. Their fur is quite coarse. And then they're able to gain quite a bit of weight to help them metabolically and insulate them through the winter. In their nose, they have a network of just different bony structures to help minimize heat loss when they're breathing in and out. So they're so well adapted to live in their environment. Their fur is unable to have water freeze on it because of the oils that they excrete and that are on their fur.
Beyond their physical features, polar bears are incredibly determined hunters. Using their powerful sense of smell, they track seals beneath the ice. Polar bears can wait for hours or even days at a seal's breathing hole, relying on patience and instinct. But catching their prey isn't always guaranteed. They need good old sturdy ice.
Polar bears rely on pack ice in order to hunt and catch the seals that they need in order to eat that blubber, have a high enough fat and calorie diet in order to put on the weight that they need to survive in the harsh environment where they live. Polar bears are not great at swimming and catching food. It would be nearly impossible for them to swim and catch a seal, and it is difficult for them to swim and catch the fish. So energetically, they're putting out a lot of effort to catch those fish, and they're not getting a big return on it. Where a polar bear is so well adapted to just hang out on the ice at a seal's breathing hole, and then that way they're not expending energy. They wait for that seal to pop up, and they're a bit of an ambush predator. So I think what I love best about polar bears is that they are incredibly patient and incredibly intelligent. And I think that makes such an awe-inspiring and deadly combination, which is what they need in order to survive.
Animals are incredible at adapting. But with climate change, shifting seasons, and rising temperatures, polar bears are facing a serious threat.
We're losing little bits of time in the shoulder months. So I think everyone can say like, wow, we never used to get this much rain in a certain month, or it's hotter a little longer into the fall and hotter a little earlier in the spring. And it's not by much. But when you're a polar bear, 14 days to hunt can be life-changing for them. So the sea ice is still forming. Is it as thick as it should be? Can a 1,000-pound polar bear walk uninterrupted for the 10 miles that they need to walk to get to the next breathing hole that they wanted to stake out? These are the things that are important. We know the ice forms, but it's not as thick as it used to be. And when a polar bear needs to swim, we know that they're exerting more energy.
As it turns out, that when polar bears are at risk, the entire Arctic ecosystem is threatened.
Every other animal in the Arctic depends on the polar bear. So if hunting is good this year, and I'm a polar bear and I catch 10 ringed seals, When I catch those seals, the only thing that I'm going to consume from those as a polar bear is the fat layer, and the rest is not what they prefer. So then that is when your Arctic fox and your snowy owls and other animals that might come and scavenge, that is when they find their big meals. And so that sustains them through the colder months. So every animal up there truly relies on the polar bear for their sustenance. And if it's a great year for polar bears, it's a great year for all of the other carnivores, and then that trickles down to the other animals.
So without a doubt, just the way nature works, all things in nature are connected. We just can't assume if you lose a species, it's not going to affect the entire rest of the natural world. Tell me a little bit about the research you're doing at the zoo with polar bears.
It's a project where we're going to try to figure out how much a polar bear weighs simply from a picture. When you see a polar bear, it's not like you can ask them to stand on a scale. So we are using the resources we have here in zoos. We can tell you what a polar bear weighs basically on almost any given day. I can have my bear come in and stand on a scale. I can also have her stand in places that are a known distance away from a fixed point so that we can take pictures, get an outline of that polar bear's body, and compare that to the weight, so that our counterparts that are working up there in the Arctic are able to take that and use it to figure out what a wild polar bear weighs, which is going to be an amazing way to judge their fitness. How are they doing as a species and a population?
Wow, that's incredible. Tell me something. A real indicator of how comfortable an animal is in human care is reproduction. Tell me about the success you've all had with polar bears there.
You know, the most important thing for polar bears when they're breeding is that female feels really secure and comfortable in her environment. It's also very important for her to gain just a ton of weight. But if she doesn't feel secure in her environment, that embryo won't implant. So we have been incredibly fortunate to have 5 surviving polar bear cubs born here at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. So one of the coolest things I've ever seen with our very first polar bears, we had twins that were being cared for by Aurora. They are about the size of a box of butter, the 1-pound box of butter that you would pick up in the grocery store. That is how big a polar bear cub is. And mom is between 800 and 900 pounds. So she's massive and they're tiny. And to watch a female polar bear try to lay down next to her cubs is an acrobatic feat. It's amazing to watch. I think everything about watching those cubs grow and developed. Aurora's had Nora, which we stepped in to help hand raise, but the next year she had twins and was the greatest mom ever. And then a couple years ago, she had a single cub and was an amazing mother to him as well. Our female Anana that lived here for a number of years had a single cub, and she was, I think, probably the most comfortable polar bear with a cub I've ever seen. She would kind of walk away and leave the cub sitting near us. So I always thought that was kind of a nod to how much she trusted the team that helped take care of her, that she was comfortable enough to walk into another room, to get a drink, to have something to eat while one of us was sitting pretty close to her cub. Polar bear moms, they take mama bear to a level that you can't even imagine. They are always on the lookout for their babies.
Well, we couldn't agree more. Nikki, you and the Columbus Zoo and the other AZA members are doing an incredible job. Thank you, and please keep it up.
Thank you very much, Peter. It was great talking to you.
Now it's time for Conservation Connection. We know that the more we can connect with wildlife, the more likely we are to protect it. So today, we want to share the story of 2 bears who were rescued after tragically losing their mother.
Their names are Tikelma and Sama. They are the most beautiful, charismatic bears, and you look into their eyes and you fall in love with them. You can really feel that connection deep in your soul with these animals.
Jenica King is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Sedgwick County Zoo in Wichita, Kansas.
In 2024, Tacoma and Selma were orphaned when their mother was killed in the Oregon wilderness. They were too young to survive on their own.
They are a brother and sister, and they were estimated to be about 3 months old, about 8 to 10 pounds, and just unable to care for themselves without their mother there to care for them.
Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife agents rescued the cubs and soon identified a permanent home for them in Kansas, where the Sedgwick County Zoo has a North American prairie habitat just right for them.
So we brought them home to Wichita, Kansas, where they spent most of the summer acclimating to Kansas, to our weather, to our zoo, to their new zookeepers who are dedicated to caring for them round the clock, being bottle fed, and then slowly integrating solid foods. They're brother and sister, so they, have been playing with each other since day one. They love to chase each other up the tree and knock each other out of the tree and see who can swim across the creek faster and get to the food faster. And so it's just been such a delight to see these bears grow. Now they're about 38 and 40 pounds, and they're just getting bigger and bigger by the day and really thriving in their new home. And we're able to give them a place where they can be the bears that they were meant to be. I feel hopeful not just for these two bears that would not have survived in the wild were it not for our teams working with these other institutions and organizations to save them. But I also feel hopeful that they are able to live at our zoo for the rest of their lives, build these connections within our community, and tell them the story of these bears in order to kind of give them a reason to care about conserving their habitats in the wild and giving them actions that they can easily carry out in their daily lives to promote conservation, not just for black bears, but for the entire North American wilderness.
What an incredible story. It's inspiring to see how zoos and conservationists step in to give orphaned cubs a second chance, not just to survive, but to thrive.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, the podcast. And remember, if we protect wildlife and the environment today, we can ensure magical moments in the wild kingdom for future generations.
Join us next week when we explore the lives of one of the polar bear's Arctic neighbors, our beluga whales.
And it felt like I was being drafted by these whales. Like I was paddling hard, but I was being pulled through the water with them. And it sort of felt like, I was one of the pod. And it was just this incredible experience.
That's next week on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, the podcast.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, the podcast, is a production of Pineapple Street Studios and Mutual of Omaha.
Our senior producer is Stephen Key. Producers are Elliot Adler and Jenny Van Solen.
This episode was produced by associate producer Lisa Cerda. Editor is Darby Maloney. Executive producers are Barry Finkel, Gabrielle Lewis, and Jen Wolfe. Pineapple's head of sound and engineering is Raj Makija. Senior audio engineers are Marina Pais, Davy Sumner, Javi Cruces, and Pedro Alvira. This episode was mixed by Davy Sumner.
Production music courtesy of Epidemic Sound and Hearst Media Production Group.
Episode clips courtesy of Hearst Media Production Group. Marketing and promotion by Emily Paschal. This podcast is hosted by me, Dr. Ray Wynn-Grant.
And me, Peter Gross. A special thanks to Caitlin Williams, Sophie Radmilovich, and Stephanie Diaz.
Today's episode is based on the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom series created by Don Meyer. Our next episode will be out in a week.
Make sure you listen on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.